Hello everybody and welcome back to Goalie Hub. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my 2019-2020 NHL predictions. I would say some of these are very bold, but you never know with the NHL. A prime example is Columbus sweeping President's Trophy winning Tampa in the first round last year. Now I know this video isn't entirely goalie related, but I just wanted to give you guys some predictions that I had for next year. Now before we start getting into the video, I wanted to talk about a couple things first. I've seen a lot of people favorite Tampa Bay again as a Stanley Cup winner, and I've also seen some people say Dallas and even Vegas. But I've noticed a pattern. You see, let's take a look back at the 2015-16 NHL season. That was when the Washington Capitals were one of the best teams in the NHL in the regular season, and they won the President's Trophy. Going into the 2016 playoffs, the Capitals were heavy favorites for the Stanley Cup. Another team that was kind of a cup favorite that year was the Dallas Stars after they won the 2015 offseason. Both of those teams kind of choked in the playoffs. Washington lost in round 2 to the Penguins, and Dallas lost in round 2 to St. Louis. The season after that, in the 16-17 campaign, the Washington Capitals were still pretty big cup favorites, even though the Penguins won the 2016 Cup. The Penguins were still in talks, I guess, for Stanley Cup winning, I guess you could say, but they were never the front runner. The Capitals that year lost in round 2 again to the Penguins, and the Penguins again won the Stanley Cup. After that year, I think most of the people lost hope in the Capitals ever winning a Stanley Cup, so they stopped picking them for the Cup. That's when they became kind of an underdog. That year is when the Lightning kind of emerged and became a huge Cup favorite. The Lightning actually seemed to be a bit different than all the other Cup favorites before, as they made it through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and they were looking really good. Then came a big choke in the conference finals against, you guessed it, the Washington Capitals, who ended up winning the 2018 Stanley Cup when nobody really expected them to. You see what I'm trying to get at here? Looking at last season, the Lightning were expected to win the Cup again, and what did they do? Choke in the playoffs again. And who won it? The Blues. Who would have thought the Blues would have won the Cup, especially in the middle of the season when they were near the last of the league? I'm telling you guys, Cup favorites do not win the Cup, usually, at least due to recent history. I'm so intelligent, aren't I? Come on, Harvard, I'm right here, man. So you'll notice in my predictions this year that I have a lot of underdogs and upsets and teams you do not expect to go where I have them going. You'll see why I said they're bold predictions in a second. But I just realized that I've been rambling on for like 3 minutes, which is a little bit too long, so I'm terribly sorry for that, but I had a point to be made, I'd say, at least for me. But anyways, let's get into the video now, finally. So, starting off in the Eastern Conference, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning again winning the Atlantic Division, and also again, I have the Washington Capitals winning the Metropolitan Division. I would also say I'm picking Tampa Bay to repeat as President's Trophy winners. Even though Tampa was forced to give up guys like Miller and Stralman in the offseason, they're still super stacked, even if Point doesn't sign till halfway through the year. They still have superstars on their team like Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, and star goaltender Andrei Vasilevsky, who won the Vezina last year. Expect Vasilevsky to be in the Vezina talk again, as well as Hedman being in the Norris talk next year. Kucherov is guaranteed to hit at least 100 points next year, and Stamkos is very likely going to get another 40-goal year. Now, for second in the Atlantic Division, it was really tough between Boston and Toronto, but I ultimately chose Boston to finish second. They still have really good players like the first line of Marchand, Bergeron, and Pastrnak, as well as Tuukka Rask in net. The Leafs, I'd say, have a better team on paper than Boston with their big offensive stars of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and John Tavares. And Toronto also has Morgan Rielly and Tyson Barrie, newly acquired, on defense, as well as Freddie Anderson in net. If the Leafs start the season without Marner, I think that would hit them harder than the Bruins starting the season without McAvoy. That was one of the main reasons why I put Boston over Toronto, and also Toronto will find a way somehow to not have home ice advantage in the playoffs. I would say Washington will win the Metro again just because they still have a lot of great players like Ovi, Kuzi, even though he got suspended by the IIHF for 4 years for something we don't need to talk about. And they also have John Carlson and Braden Holtby. They're still a really good team. Now, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins at second in the Metro making the playoffs, and I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with me with this pick, but here's my explanation. The Penguins made a lot of moves this season after getting swept by the Islanders in the first round of the 2019 playoffs. Now, the Phil Kessel trade I don't really like. Galchenyuk's good-ish, I guess, but not nearly as good as Phil Kessel, and they're both similar players, both decent offensively, well, Kessel's way better, and both are lacking their defensive skill, I would say. But I do really like getting Dominic Cahoon, who I think is a really underrated forward from Chicago for Olli Mata. And you gotta think about it, Sidney Crosby is still in the Penguins, Malkin's still in the Penguins. Malkin is bound for a huge rebound year after only getting 21 goals last year. Crosby is a 100-point scorer guy. He is your face of the franchise. He still has the ability to carry them into the playoffs, I think. I have Carolina finishing third in the Metro because I still think they're a good team as well. I think Mrazek's going to do decent as a starter, I guess you could say, because I would not split him with James Reimer, who had a very poor year last year. And Nedeljkovic actually might come into the NHL this year over Reimer. And they still have one of the best defense corps in the NHL, led by Jacob Slavin, who really became a good defender last year. And I think Aho might break out for 95 points this year, something like that. Like, he's just really good as well. And he almost went to Montreal this year. Poor Montreal. Speaking of Montreal, I also have them as a wildcard team this year, and I think both wildcards will come from the Atlantic. Some people may disagree and be like, oh, the Rangers should make the playoffs. Oh, the Devils should make the playoffs. Oh, the Islanders should make the playoffs. Flyers. Da-da-da-da-da. Like, I don't care. Shut up. These are my predictions. This is my video. I'd say Florida gets the first wild card. They just improved their team a lot. I know they seem to choke and miss the playoffs when people think they'll make it, but they actually have a good goalie this year in Bobrovsky, so I think they'll do it. And as well as Barkov will possibly hit 100 points, maybe? I don't know. He might. And also, I think Montreal will get it. If Price plays out of his mind, they'll definitely get in. But if Domi can at least do somewhat what he did last year, and same as Thomas Tatar, and maybe Drouin has a bit of a bounce-back year, they could definitely make the playoffs, I think, and be a solid team. And, I think this is a very bold thing to say, but, it's a big stretch, but Victor Mete scoring his first career goal in this coming season. Now, I have the New York Rangers just barely missing the playoffs, I'd say by no more than 5 or 6 points. They have a very solid team. I just think they're too inexperienced. They're going to need one more year until they're really true, like, cup contenders almost, I guess you could say, maybe next year, I don't know. And same as the Devils, they're also good, but big question mark is Corey Schneider. How will he play? Will he be good and rebound, or will it be another year like last year? Now, I also have the New York Islanders missing the playoffs, and again, some of you may disagree with me, but I don't care. Too bad, so sad. I would say the Islanders, they had a little bit of a fluke year last year. They were supposed to be horrible, and they made the second round due to mostly their strong defensive play, mostly due to Barry Trotz's coaching style, and I think he'll still have them blocking shots, and their defense will be a huge wall that I think Donald Trump will be very proud of, but they're just not enough to get in the playoffs again. They'd still be a good team, though. And with Philadelphia and Buffalo, it's two kind of interesting teams because they're both sort of on the bubble of playoffs, but not quite there yet. I don't really like what Philadelphia did this offseason, to be honest. I just don't think they're a good enough team still to make the playoffs. Even though they have a pretty good roster on paper, I don't think they'll pull through. And same thing with Buffalo. They proved that last year they were on the rise for a bit by being first in the NHL with that 10-game winning streak, and they choked it all away in the second half, so I really don't see them in the playoffs. And Detroit and Ottawa, they're rebuilding, so they're kind of expected to miss the playoffs. They don't have that great of a roster, both teams, so they'll miss the playoffs. And Columbus, they lost basically all of their talent, so they're almost done except for Werenski and Jones. They really don't have too much talent. I mean, they have some good players like Dubois and Atkinson. Even Ryan Murray's not that bad on defense, but I don't not like Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins as your tandem. I'm sorry. That's not going to work. Now moving on to the Western Conference, I have the San Jose Sharks once again winning the Pacific Division and the Dallas Stars winning the Central Division. Sharks did lose some offensive power this past offseason, most notably being Joe Pavelski via free agency, but I still think they'll have a strong year, especially with that top two defense of Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson. Goaltending is still a concern for them, but I think they'll get by. Dallas did the complete opposite and gained a lot in the offseason, most notably the aforementioned Joe Pavelski from the Sharks via free agency, and I think Corey Perry picking him out for $1.5 million as well as Sekera. They're both good depth pieces, and Perry can be some good secondary scoring for them. I think Bishop is going to have an insane year, as well as Heiskanen's going to have a breakout year, and Klingberg's going to continue to be good. Now, the other two teams I have making it from the Pacific Division is Vegas and Calgary. Now, Vegas was kind of a no-brainer because I think having a full season of Mark Stone will be huge for them. Even though they lost some players, most notably, I guess, Nikita Gusev, Colin Miller. Gusev didn't play for them last year, so that's not really a change for them. But they're going to be a really good team, I think, and Fleury will lead them in net. And Calgary. Now, I was really debating putting Arizona in the playoffs, but at the end I put Calgary just because they have more star power. Arizona picked up Phil Kessel from the Penguins this offseason, but Calgary still has a better offense with that fire first line of Gaudreau, Monahan, and Elias Lindholm, as well as a strong defense still led by Giordano and Noah Hanifin. Goaltending, I don't know. That's part of the reason why I almost put them out of the playoffs. I don't know what Cam Talbot's going to be like. Is he going to be good again, or what? Is David Rittich going to be the first half of last year Dave Rittich, or the second half where he wasn't so good? Big question mark in net, but other than that, they're a pretty good team, so I have them making the playoffs. Now, again, I have both wildcards coming from one division. This time it's the Central Division in Chicago and Nashville. And Chicago, their defense is really the only thing that's wrong with them. Crawford, if he's healthy, can still be a solid goalie. Picking up Robin Lehner is huge for their goalie depth in case Crawford cannot play. Their defense, yeah, as I talked about before, it's not great, but it's serviceable. Kind of reminds me of the Leafs a couple years ago, well, even last year too. But their offense is just stupidly stacked. Kane, Taves, Strome, DeBrincat, that's amazing right there. Strome really proved that he can be a good NHLer last year, almost a point per game when he came to Chicago via trade. And Nashville, they picked up Matt Duchene. They lost PK Subban. They almost basically traded Subban for Duchene. So they filled their first-line center need, kind of, but they're just in such a stacked division. I think they're going to barely scrape in the playoffs. Now, also in the Central, I have the Blues at number 2 and the Avalanche at number 3. Now, the Blues, I've actually seen some people put them outside the playoffs. I disagree with that. I think a full season of Jordan Binnington will really help them, as they proved in the second half of last year that with a good goalie, they're cup contenders. And I think even if Binnington only posts like a .916 save percentage and is sort of just good, nothing special, which is kind of what I'm expecting out of him, they'll be fine. With all that star power of Tarasenko, O'Reilly, Pietrangelo, Parayko, they'll be fine. Now, Colorado is kind of an underrated team in my opinion. Their defense is actually pretty good. Cale Makar is going to come in and definitely be a Calder Trophy contender. May even win it, you never know. But he looked really good in the playoffs last year. Eric Johnson's a serviceable top 4 defenseman. They lost Tyson Barrie, but they got Nazem Kadri to help out with some offensive depth, which was one of their issues last year and the year before. And they also got Donskoy and Burakovsky to kind of help out with that. But then, yeah, you still got McKinnon. Rantanen, I think, is going to sign because they have a lot of cap space. Landeskog, that's a fire first line. McKinnon might even hit 100 points. Who knows? I think he will, to be honest. And yeah, they'll get in the playoffs. They'll be good. Grubauer kind of showed he was a starter too, so. And then some of the teams I have barely missing the playoffs. Arizona, again, they got Phil Kessel. I think a full season of Nick Schmaltz and him being healthy will definitely be good, as he was pretty good actually last year for Arizona when he came over. Not as good as Dylan Strome and Perlini, I would say, but he was still good. Keller, I think, is definitely going to have a bounce back year. He hasn't been great, I would say. And then their defense is phenomenal. Goaltending is phenomenal, but they're just going to barely miss out on the playoffs, I think. And then Vancouver as well, they're kind of on the rise. I'd say they're almost there, but not quite at the playoffs. They need one more year. I guess either Markstrom or Demko to step up really would be this year. And then they have their number one goalie. Their defense was pretty good. Quinn Hughes is going to come in and again contend for the Calder. Besser is going to develop more. He'll definitely sign a contract. Pettersson will develop more. I like Bo Horvat a lot, but they're going to barely miss. And then Winnipeg was kind of just the odd team out, in my opinion. Connor Hellebuyck had a horrible year last year compared to the season before. He didn't seem like Connor Hellebuyck. He seemed tired, and it kind of showed in that series against Vegas 2 years ago in the conference finals. He started to look a bit tired, and that's carried over to last year. And with Winnipeg losing Trouba, and with the whole weird contract situations with Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor, not looking too good for them. They lost a lot and didn't get too much back, so they're not looking too hot. And then there's Edmonton and Minnesota, which first of all, where's Minnesota going? They looked like they were going to get younger last year, and then they go out and sign Matt Zuccarello in free agency. Like, what are you guys up to? Like, what are you trying to accomplish there? I don't understand. They're trying to be competitive, but they just don't have a competitive team to work with. So they're going to finish last in the Central. They're not that great. And then Edmonton, man, Peter Chiarelli screwed them over so bad. They couldn't do anything this offseason. I think it was just the icing on the cake when Peter Chiarelli signed Koskinen to that huge extension right before he got fired. That just was, the cream of the crop. Poor McDavid, I swear, man. Can he at least make the playoffs? And then there's also Anaheim and LA, who are both rebuilding, so they're going to be 7 and 8 in the Pacific for me. On Anaheim, Rickard Rakell, I think, will have a bit of a bounce back here, but it obviously won't be enough to get them to the playoffs, same as John Gibson's play. He's a great goalie, but the team around him is not that great. They will have some rookies in the lineup like Sam Steele, Max Jones, Troy Terry, maybe even Maxime Comtois, but they'll be 1 or 2 years away from making a huge impact at the NHL level. And same with the Kings. They're still an older, slower team. Their young guys are still 2 or 3 years away from making an impact. So I guess here's my way too early 2020 Stanley Cup playoff predictions. I do have the Capitals winning the Cup. As I said way in the beginning of the video, I did pick an underdog, and there's kind of an underdog, not gonna lie. So we'll start off with the first round here. So I have Tampa beating Montreal in 6 games in the first round. I think Tampa will not be 2019 Tampa Bay, and they'll make it past the first round at least anyways. Montreal is sort of just a playoff bubble team. They're sort of just there, but they're nowhere near what Tampa is. Tampa's going to take them down. Now, this is a bit more of a controversial pick. I have my favorite team, the Leafs, taking down the Bruins in 6 games. Now, the Leafs actually had a 3-2 series lead in 2019, but they blew it. But this time, they have, I think, a full season of Jake Muzzin will help them sort of get more gelled with the team, first of all. Second of all, they're going to have a third-line center there instead of Kadri getting suspended again. And then they're going to also have Tyson Barrie to help out on D. And, it seemed like Freddie was kind of choking there, but I don't know if he really choked in the Game 6. It was more Game 7. So if they completely avoid the Game 7 altogether, they might take them down. So, I just thought, hey, maybe a bit of an upset. So there's my pick for that round. And then there's also Washington beating wildcard Florida in 7 games. Now, I think the Panthers have a good roster, and it's good enough to push the Star Capitals to the 7th game of the series. And I said star, I meant to say star-powered Capitals. But the Capitals do have, yes, a lot of star power, and that'll get them through Game 7. They will not lose in a overtime Game 7 to a wildcard team again like they did in 2019. They will make it to the second round. And then I also have Carolina taking down Pittsburgh, and that is just Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. They're kind of washed up. I said Crosby would carry them to the playoffs, but I did not say he would carry them to the Cup. Carolina would be, I bet, a bit of an underdog, sort of, if Pittsburgh definitely has a season I think they're going to have. So Carolina's going to win. Simple. Plain and simple. Now, going over to the Western Conference, the first series I have is also probably controversial. I have the wild card Blackhawks beating the first place in the Pacific Division, San Jose Sharks. Now, the reason being is that Jones is an inconsistent goalie, let's say that, and Chicago has a star-powered offense. A star-powered offense and an inconsistent goalie usually is not a good mix. So that's why I have Chicago winning, and I think they're going to be an underdog, so that's going to help them go to the second round, I guess you could say. The hockey gods are going to not like San Jose, especially for last year. It'd be kind of karma, I guess you could say. But, San Jose Stars will get them to a 7th game, but that's all there is. Now, I have the Vegas Golden Knights sweeping the Calgary Flames. I just think the Flames' goaltending is really going to blow up in their face. Vegas has a very good team, and Mark Stone is leading that offense, as well as William Karlsson and Jonathan Marchessault. That'll be kind of a deadly combo there, and I don't think Talbot or Riddick will be able to stop it. So that's why I have the Flames getting swept. And then I also have Dallas beating Nashville in 6, just like last year. Dallas, they're a really good team. Nashville, they're not as good. Plain and simple. Okay, I won't leave it at that. Dallas, they both got good goaltending, I'd say. Dallas is the edge, though, I think. Rene's not as good as he was even just like 2 or 3 years ago. He's getting older now. He's above 35 years old, I believe. And Bishop is a really good goalie in his prime, basically, near the tail end of it, but he's still in his prime. And the Stars have a lot of power on defense and offense that the Predators just can't quite match. And I have Colorado upsetting St. Louis in a 7-game war. And I think it's going to be like last year where the Cup winner gets upset in 7 games in the first round. It's going to happen next year, this upcoming year, 2020. But yeah, it's going to happen to St. Louis, I think. I think Colorado, they're just going to go on fire. That's my opinion. They're just going to light it up and they're just going to go far in the playoffs. So in order to do that, I have them beating St. Louis, who I think will perform good, but they won't be able to match Colorado just being insane. Now, the first series of the second round I'm going to cover, we have the Tampa Bay annual choking job. This time, they'll choke in 6 games to the freaking Maple Leafs. I honestly do not see this happening, but I thought Tampa will choke somewhere, so it might as well be in the second round, am I right? I think the Maple Leafs might just go on a bit of a tear. I hope, as a Maple Leafs fan, I really do hope. But yeah, the Tampa choke, it's coming. It has to happen somewhere, so I'm calling it second round. Then in the other Eastern Conference series, I have Washington beating Carolina in 6 games. It's a rematch of last year's first round series between them, but I think Washington will out-battle Carolina this time and take them down in 6 games, and Ovi will make it past the second round for the second time in his career. Then in the Western Conference, I have the wildcard Blackhawks taking down the powerhouse Vegas Golden Knights. And I think Chicago is just going to catch fire and beat Vegas. Simple as that. I feel like Chicago would roll with Robin Lehner in the playoffs, to be honest. But I guess whichever goalie does better in the regular season. But I'm going to assume it's Lehner. So I feel like Lehner would just out-duel Marc-Andre Fleury in that series. But it would be close. It would be very close. And then in Dallas, Colorado, another 7-game series for Colorado, and I also have Colorado coming out on top again. I just think, again, Colorado's going to catch on fire, just like I said with Chicago, and Colorado's going to keep chugging along, and they're going to take down the favorited Stars. So that would be an interesting series to see as well. Now, moving on to the conference finals, I have the Capitals sweeping the Maple Leafs. I see the Maple Leafs going on fire for the first 2 rounds, and then they're just going to choke in the conference finals. I don't really see them getting anywhere past that. The Capitals will really just shine in that series, I think, and Ovi will really be a star in that. And then in the Western Conference Finals, I'd say Chicago loses to Colorado in 6 games. I'd say Colorado and Chicago both would be on fire, but Chicago would not be as good as Colorado in this series. I think Grubauer would become really good. McKinnon would just carry the team on his back because he would want a chance to go to the Cup Finals, which I think he would get. Then in the Stanley Cup Finals, I have the Washington Capitals taking down the Colorado Avalanche in 5 games. And I'll even go out on a limb and predict the Capitals beat the Avalanche in Game 5 by a score of 3-1. I'm calling it right now, man. I just think Ovechkin is going to be unreal, and he'll get his 2nd Stanley Cup. I kind of feel like the Capitals will become the Red Wings after Yzerman won his first cup, because they were known for choking before then, but then he won his first cup, and they won a couple more after that, so I think Ovi and the Capitals will do the same. Now, I wanted to add a little bit of a bonus part to my predictions, so I'm going to predict the award winners and the draft lottery results. So let's start off with the awards. So I'm going to say Nathan MacKinnon wins the Hart Trophy and the Art Ross, and I'm going to say he gets 106 points. And runner-ups will be Kucherov and Crosby for the Hart, and McDavid and Kucherov for the Art Ross, and the Maurice Richard will go to Alexander Ovechkin, runner-ups being Stamkos and Draisaitl. The Calder will go to Jack Hughes, which is kind of an unpopular opinion because everyone keeps saying Kapokaka will, but I think Hughes will. I'm just going with my gut and just going to say Hughes. The Norris will go to John Carlson, and Yossi and Hedman will be runner-ups for that. And the Vezina, Ben Bishop will finally get his Vezina trophy. And I said Vasilevsky and Binnington. Looking back on this, I don't really know if I'd pick Binnington to be a finalist, but I think that was more of just a bold prediction to have Binnington as a finalist for the Vezina, because why not? You can disagree with me. I disagree with myself, so there you go. And then I think the first pick, Detroit will get the first pick, Ottawa will get the second pick, and Anaheim will get the third pick. So Detroit will get Alexis Lafreniere, a superstar forward in the making. So he will be the face of their franchise. Oh, imagine Lafreniere, Larkin, and Zadina. That would be a great first line. Alrighty, everyone. We have finally reached the end of this video. I know it is a super long video, like over 20 minutes. But it kind of made sense, I guess. I was telling my thoughts, I guess you could say. Saying, whatever. My thoughts on the upcoming season, so that took way longer than I expected to, but I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at GoalieHub for the latest news and updates about my YouTube channel. Yes, I am saying the Washington Capitals, the underdog, will win a Stanley Cup again in 2020, beating the Avalanche in 5 games. If you guys have a different opinion, comment it down below. And I guess subscribe to the channel. I will have more content out, including a video recapping the top 25 goalie prospects in hockey. I did an Instagram series on that, so I guess if you want spoilers for it, go on my Instagram. That's another reason to follow my Instagram. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video.